Good evening and welcome to the evening news for today, Thursday, July 23rd, 2020. I'm Delaware Dash. Thank you for tuning in. Now let's take a look at some of the lead stories tonight. PPPC promises fierce resistance if APNU-AFC refuses to leave office. Lowenfield finally served to face criminal charges tomorrow. 23-year-old man shot dead at La Penitence. Body of quarantine youth found in river at Kaburi. Youth charged for setting fire at Army base. And CID department on Essequibo Coast. And Guyana may experience thunderstorms from tropical storm Gonzalo. And now for the news in detail. The People's Progressive Party Civic will be fiercely resisting further attempts by the caretaker APNU-AFC coalition to hang on to power as the country nears its fifth month without a declaration of the march to elections. In our lead story tonight, Party General Secretary Barrett Jagdeo also warned of more serious consequences from the international community if the coalition continues to refuse to leave office.
On Wednesday, the caretaker coalition declared that it will not be accepting any declaration based on the figures from the national recount. This, according to PPPC General Secretary Barrett Jagdeo, is not only a clear defiance of the decisions by the Guyana Elections Commission, the Chief Justice acting Roxanne George, and the Caribbean Court of Justice, as well as the calls by the international community, but also the previous commitments by President David Granger to accept whatever declaration is made by GECOM. Jagdeo noted that this position of the coalition is not surprising given the history of the PNC, the largest party in the APNU fraction of the coalition, not accepting any electoral loss since 1992. However, the PPPC General Secretary noted that the Granger-led regime is living in a fool's world if they believe the APNU-AFC can continue to hang on to power. In a missive today, Jagdeo said, quote, "If the international community was prepared to condemn and levy sanctions against people who are trying to undermine democracy even before the declaration, just imagine the consequences the riggers will face if they refuse to leave office after the declaration, essentially staging a coup d'etat. Needless to say, such a move will be met by fierce resistance by the PPP and other forces fighting for democracy." End quote. He also noted, quote, "What we have to do now is to work to ensure that we have a declaration that is reflective of the will of the people, and only one that is derived from the figures generated by the national recount can produce such an outcome." End quote. Already, the United States has imposed visa restrictions against government and electoral officials who were found to be undermining Guyana's democracy. The United Kingdom also said it has already started the process of putting consequences in place against individuals in Guyana, while Canada is likely to follow suit as well. Reporting for the Evening News, Vanu Manikchand.
Embattled Chief Elections Officer Keith Lowenfield is expected to appear before the Georgetown Magistrates Court tomorrow to answer to 3 private criminal charges which he was officially served today. Here are the details from Vanu Manikchand.
Chief Elections Officer Keith Lowenfield has been evading service of the private criminal charges filed against him, but due to strategic efforts, the summons was officially served today. As such, Lowenfield is mandated to make an appearance at the Georgetown Magistrates Court tomorrow to answer to the 3 criminal charges in relation to conspiracy to commit fraud and misconduct in public office. On July 3rd, the Georgetown Magistrates Court issued a summons for the CEO. The charges were filed by private citizens Josh Kanai and Desmond Morion. Kanai, a member of the New Movement Party, filed a charge claiming that Lowenfield, between the 5th of March and the 23rd of June 2020, conspired with person or persons unknown to commit the common law offense of fraud when he submitted his elections report dated June 23rd, which included figures that altered the results of the elections. Meanwhile, Morion is contending that Lowenfield, while performing performing his duties as CEO of GECOM, ascertained the results of the March 2 elections, knowing the said results to be false, amounting to a breach of the public's trust. Morian subsequently filed a third charge, which alleges that Lowenfield conspired with person or persons unknown to use returning officer Clermont Mingo's fraudulent figures to prepare a report that was submitted to the chairperson of the Guyana Elections Commission, retired Justice Claudette Singh, back in March. Reporting for the Evening News, Vanu Manikchand.
De facto Foreign Affairs Minister Dr. Karen Cummins and Attorney General Basil Williams continue to be reprimanded for the blatant untruth they peddled at the Organization of American States Permanent Council meeting on Tuesday. This time around, the criticisms are coming from former Army Chief Brigadier Retired Mark Phillips, who's also the People's Progressive Party prime ministerial candidate. Jemima Holmes tells us more.
Brigadier Retired Mark Phillips, who was one of the People's Progressive Party civics representatives to the Organization of American States' Permanent Council meeting, witnessed firsthand the attempts of the APNU-AFC duo in bending the truth on electoral matters. In spite of their attempts, Phillips noted that they were unsuccessful in swaying the OAS.
They were unable, with their lies and misrepresentation, to budge the opinion formed by those diplomats, the informed opinion, notwithstanding the attempts to misrepresent the issues by Mrs. Karen Cummins and Mr. Basil Williams. When you listen to the presentations by the representatives, the ambassadors, and the Secretary General of the OAS, those diplomats are well informed as to the situation in Guyana. And that is what saved the day.
Labeling their presentations as embarrassing for the Guyanese people and the country as a whole, the retired brigadier noted that Karen Cummins and Basil Williams' behavior completely contradicted their previous plans of bettering international relationships.
What Mr. Williams and Mrs. Cummins did there yesterday, they wasted their time and they made Guyana look bad. This is a government that prides itself with, improving the image of Guyana on the regional and international scene. And in one fell swoop, an election that they lost and they continue to cling to power, they have brought Guyana into disrepute on the international scene.
In presenting a solution for the APNU-AFC's need to rebuild their party and ethics, Phillips suggested a younger crop of politicians who are more in touch with the importance of democracy.
Perhaps they should look at themselves, and the older guys should step aside and let the younger generation come up and assume positions of leadership in those parties. Because I want to believe that many of the younger generations, the young professionals in those parties, are more in tune with the 21st century values, which include democracy.
For the Evening News, Jemima Holmes.
The three opposition-nominated commissioners at the Elections Commission have condemned the various kinds of attacks against the GECOM chair, retired Justice Claudette Singh, particularly those emanating from the APNU-AFC coalition. More in this report.
In a statement today, the three opposition commissioners, Seisgan Raj, Bibi Shadiq, and Robeson Ben, unreservedly condemned the scurrilous attacks on the GECOM chair, retired Justice Claudette Singh, and called on the perpetrators, including senior members of the caretaker APNU-AFC, to cease and desist from doing so. They said, quote, "While commissioners may not always agree with the chairman, she has always discharged her duties with professionalism, fairness, and impartiality, and in keeping with the tenets of the Constitution and other legal provisions," end quote. The three opposition commissioners believe these vile attacks directed at the GECOM chair stem from her firm stance in rejecting the fraudulent reports presented and insisting that only the recount figures be presented to the Commission for the declaration of the final elections results. These attacks against Justice Singh started since March as the post-elections events unfolded. In fact, back in April, she had reported a death threat on her life to the Guyana police force and subsequently told reporters that persons had a bounty on her head since Friday, April 17, 2020. More recently, however, the attacks have escalated and the police last week arrested and charged an APNU-AFC activist from Linden who had threatened to kill the GECOM chair in a post from a fake Facebook profile. Meanwhile, even more disturbing is a video on social media showing persons conducting a makeshift funeral with a doll which they claim represents the GECOM chair. These attacks had prompted United States Ambassador to Guyana Sarah Ann Lynch to also condemn the acts.
I am shocked and appalled at the dangerous statements and actions that I have seen directed at the chairwoman. Chairwoman Singh is a person of the utmost integrity and a distinguished jurist who has given decades of her life in service to her country. I hope that all Guyanese will speak out on her behalf and allow her to continue her work and bring this electoral process to closure.
Reporting for the Evening News, Vanu Manikchand.
As the APNU-AFC coalition continues to file legal challenge after legal challenge in a bid to hang on to power, questions are being raised about the source of funding for these initiatives, specifically whether taxpayers' dollars are being used. Find out more in this report.
During a virtual engagement on the Kaitro radio platform, Dr. Yog Mahadio highlighted a concern of many Guyanese citizens regarding the use of taxpayers' dollars to foot the legal bills as the APNU-AFC files case after case in a bid to prevent GECOM from making a declaration using the recount results. Speaking to this issue, attorney at law Christopher Ram indicated that such a practice is against basic fundamental democratic practices.
Governments don't contest elections. Parties do. Yeah. Now, is the APNU-AFC paying their legal bills, or are we taxpayers paying those bills? And somebody's got to answer for these. As I said, we have to understand very clearly, political parties contest elections. Yes, the chief elections officer was made a party to this case, and immoral as it is, he may have a case for the expenses to be borne by the state.
Citing the presentation by the caretaker Foreign Affairs Minister and Attorney General to the OAS on Tuesday, Ram expressed his disappointment with the constant abuse of the courts and made known his lack of confidence in the Attorney General.
Basil Williams claims that he was there to protect the Constitution. I'm not sure how confident we should be to have someone like Basil Williams protecting our Constitution.
Nonetheless, the political activist, while hinting that a criminal investigation may follow based on the immoral practices on the part of the coalition, also voiced his confidence in other factions of Guyanese law and order to ensure that the country is not held hostage.
I still believe there are enough people in our country, including the Chancellor, including the head of our Defense Force, that will not allow an unlawful government to stay in place.
For the Evening News, Jemima Holmes.
We now tell you that Alastair Routledge has taken up his new post as president of ExxonMobil Guyana after serving in a similar role in Qatar over the past 6 years. He replaces Rod Henson, who was recently named Vice President Wells for ExxonMobil in Houston. Routledge says he is looking forward to having many great achievements in the years to come. Let's take a look.
Guyana is the place to be. This is the future, and so I was so excited at the opportunity. I see in Guyana a young workforce, very enthusiastic, talented, and I just hope that we can hold on to everybody and continue to build the organization. My first big mountain to climb is getting to really understand all that everybody has put in place and to help come in and be a positive impact. To me, I will have accomplished what I set out to do if when I leave, I've been able to build on this great foundation that is already in place that Rod had led the organization to, and that we have moved forward and matured as a company. The natural resources are those of the country, and our job is to help the country develop the natural resource in a responsible way for a sustainable future of the country.
Coming up, 23-year-old man shot dead at La Penitence. Body of quarantine youth found in river at Kaburi, and arson attempt at Suriname Embassy in Guyana. Welcome back. You're watching the evening news. A 23-year-old man was this afternoon shot dead whilst at Middle Road, La Penitence. It is suspected that he was killed during the course of a robbery. Rupert Sinarain reports.
The victim has been identified as 23-year-old Navindra Samaru of West La Penitence, Georgetown. He was a sales representative for a phone card distribution company. Based on reports, the incident occurred sometime after 13 hours on Thursday afternoon. The young man had gone home to collect lunch and was on his way back to work when he was shot in the vicinity of Middle Road, La Penitence. When the evening news arrived at the scene, his father informed this newscast that by the time he arrived at the hospital, his son was already dead.
I was at work when I got a message from my niece. Right, so when from there I leave and go to the hospital, he's already died. All right, it made I understand that he came for lunch and left to go to work, and on his way to work, he got shot. I can't say anymore. I wasn't there, I was at work.
Meanwhile, the victim's employer told reporters that Samaru had no significant amount of cash at the time of the fatal shooting.
I was called from his wife's phone at about 1:20 this afternoon, and his mother was crying. And his mother said something like, Navin got shot. There's Navin Samu, my staff, the marketing representative. And I right away contacted our general manager. Right away I go to him and say, you hear something about Navin? And he said, I just talked to Navin 2 minutes back. He lives on the island. He collected his food. He went home for food. He went to the bank first to do some letter or something, to take some letter. And then went to GRA. From GRA he come and he went home for his food.
Police are continuing their investigation. Rupa Sinarain, The Evening News.
Our Burris correspondent Andrew Carmichael joins us now to report that police are investigating the circumstances surrounding the death of a 23-year-old man whose body was this morning fished out of the river at Kaburi, Region 7, Kuyuni, Mazaruni. Here are the details.
Dead is Roger Alert of Brighton Village Quarantine. The young man had traveled to Region 7 to overlook his father's mining operations at Kaburi Creek. He was expected to spend 1 week after arriving at the mine site on Monday. His father, Ralston, left him in charge of the dredging operation on Tuesday to come to Georgetown to conduct some business. The father was slated to return today. However, yesterday afternoon, family members got information that a young man had disappeared in the Kaburi Creek. His sister Rochelle says initial reports suggest that her brother and two friends were swimming when he disappeared under the water.
They said when they reach across and they look back, there's no water. So it's like hard to believe that actually did happen. Does he have a child? She's only 1 year old.
Family members were also told that Alert and two friends were in a boat and the boat capsized, throwing them into the dark water. Rochelle says they are puzzled since Alert was a good swimmer.
He saved my father. My father got drowned like 1 time or 2 times, and he was right there saving all the time. But my father don't know to swim, but my brother do know to swim. I am saying if 3 of us are swimming, accustomed to swim over the same river, we must have a conversation and look back to see how much we reach across or what happened. I can see that the 2 don't reach across, and then when they reach across, they can't find me. Then they look back for him, but they said they swim across back, but they didn't find me. So till this morning, so we know it's what really happened. Daddy tell him the last phone call that he called him and tell him that don't left to go nowhere because the water. It's only 2 days ago that he left him to look after everything. It's like he and 2 workers alone that he left him in charge of everything, and he just followed the company and crossed over the river. Normally they go for a boat, they just swim when the water low.
There are reports that no marks were seen on the body when it was initially examined. However, a post-mortem will be performed. Albert's death has hit the family very hard at this point in time. According to Rochelle, their mother died 4 years ago.
Same month, around the same time. It's hard though. It's really hard. This morning we received a message that they find me. We don't know the state that he's in. But the police are investigating the matter. My father's up in the area. It's supposed to reach at any time.
The father has been operating the business at Kaburi for the past 5 years. It was not the first time Alert was left to overlook the operations. Police are investigating. For the Evening News, Andrew Carmichael.
A fire suspected to be electrical in origin on Wednesday evening completely razed the 2-story wooden building at Monrepo, Pasture, East Coast, Demerara. Shamar Allen tells us more.
The fire ripping through the 2-story building at Monrepo, East Coast, Demerara. 4 persons are now homeless since the blaze destroyed their entire home. The Evening News understands that the fire started at about 22 hours on Wednesday in a bedroom located in the lower flat of the building. One of the occupants of the house stated that the fire started from a dysfunctional socket in the house.
My grandma actually passed through the back there, and everybody just passed through the yard to go the back, right? And we put on a light at the side. But it was kind of, my father was warning me that the pipe just sparked fire, right? But I don't know, it's because of the plenty rain, make you get more worse, right? And you feel so bad that people got to watch when walking in the dark. So I put it on, and I tell you, I said, but you must watch it. And when people to pass, must take it off, right? But before people could pass off and take off the light, the fire start.
The homeowner for the house, 68-year-old Omaro Diopal, told reporters that his son alerted him about a cloud of smoke that was emanating from the bedroom.
Me there upstairs asleep, me got my last son. They there downstairs in a room there. And he called for me, Daddy, what's smoke? By the time he come down, there's a fire. And he gone off.
By the time the fire tenders arrived at the scene, the building was completely gutted. Meanwhile, the home of a security guard attached to the professional guard services was also destroyed by fire on Wednesday. The 2-story wooden house located at 13th Field, Section A, Sophia, went up in flames, leaving 3 homeless. Reporting for the Evening News, I am Shamar Allen.
A 24-year-old excavator operator was yesterday charged for setting fires to 2 public buildings on the Essequibo coast in Region 2. However, it remains unclear why the youth attempted to burn down the building, the Criminal Investigation Department in Anna Regina, and an unoccupied Army base at Maria's Lodge. Here are the details from Rupert Sino.
24-year-old Keon Davis appeared before Her Worship Esther Sam at the Saudi Magistrates Court. He is accused of setting fire to the Guyana Defense Force 2nd Infantry Battalion building at Maria's Lodge, Essequibo Coast, and the Criminal Investigation Department building at Anna Regina, Essequibo Coast. Those fires were set on the same day, July 14th. Davis was not required to plead to the charges. However, bail was granted in the sum of $200,000 on each charge. It is unclear why the accused started the fires and how police managed to track him down. The fire at the CID department was noticed by a police officer who was in the compound when he observed smoke coming from the Regional Detective Inspector's office, and as a result, the fire service was immediately summoned. Firefighters succeeded in putting out the blaze before it destroyed the entire building. The fire at the unoccupied Army base was noticed by residents who formed a bucket brigade to help oust the blaze. On the same day, the GECOM sub-office in Linden, Region 10 was destroyed by fire, suspected to be arson. Just a few days prior, an attempt was made to burn down one of Guyana's famed landmarks, the Humaniana, located in Kingston, Georgetown. Rupa Sinarayan, The Evening News.
Meanwhile, the Guyana Police Force is investigating attempts to start a fire at the Suriname Embassy in Guyana, located at the corner of Naira and New Garden Streets, Georgetown. In the latest known attempt, which occurred at around 1:30 on Wednesday, Molotov cocktails, also known as pedal bombs, were thrown at the building. A security officer on duty recalled seeing 2 fireball objects heading in the direction of the embassy. The police were immediately summoned and 2 bottles of suspected flammable liquid and a burnt-out tire were found at the scene. This is not the first time such an incident has occurred at the embassy. On Saturday last, there was a similar incident, but the inflamed objects hit a tree, which was scorched. Suriname's Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Business and International Politics, Albert Ramdin, is quoted in the Surinamese press as saying that there is no indication that the attacks on the embassy has anything to do with the political situation in Guyana. The Guyana Police Force has not issued an official statement on the development, though questions were posed by the media. In other news, Tropical Storm Gonzalo is expected to create over northern Guyana conditions that may result in thunderstorms over the weekend. The storm is located approximately 1,650 kilometers to the east-northeast of Georgetown and is moving in the westerly direction. Meteorologists' model indicate that the eye of the storm may be to the north of Guyana in the Atlantic Ocean, as the hurricane between 8 p.m. on July 24 and 8 a.m. on July 25th. The storm is not expected to directly impact Guyana unless the system changes its trajectory and begin to travel in a southwestern direction. One new case of the novel coronavirus has been recorded as of today, bringing the total number of cases recorded to date to 351. Here are the details.
The total number of tests done is 5,263. The number of persons tested is 3,975. And 3,624 persons are negative. As of the 23rd of July 2020, the number of positives is now 351, with 19 COVID-related deaths. The number of active cases in institutional isolation is 156. 33 persons are in institutional quarantine, and 2 persons are in the COVID ICU. To date, we are happy to announce that 176 persons have recovered.
With public servants and other private sector workers returning to work, the DCMO provided guidelines which employers can adopt.
Employers should erect plexiglass or other transparent barriers between staff area and the public. There should be clear demarcations showing 6-foot distancing either on the floors or walls to guide the public. Employers should rearrange office space to facilitate 6-foot distancing. Reduce in-person meeting to the barest essentials. Technology such as Zoom, Teams can be used to conduct meetings. Discourage employee congregation by water dispensers or coffee stations in the dining rooms or restrooms. Lunch periods or breaks should be staggered, and staff, wherever possible, can be encouraged to have lunch at their desks.
She also stated that all entrances to public and private workplaces should have screening and hygienic blocks. Screening will entail taking temperatures with the laser thermometer. Hygienic blocks should comprise sinks with running water and liquid soap or hand sanitizing stations. Reporting for the Evening News, I am Shamar Allen.